Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de, today I'm going to talk about, of course, an answer to a very simple question. How much credit limit would you want? Once again, wow, that should be obvious, but apparently people still need to ask. Well, ask and ye shall receive, I guess. Stay tuned until the end of the video to find out what my personal credit limit is right now. Hey, XenPuck here. Another day, another simple question to answer that I'm basically flabbergasted that someone even needed to ask. Of course, this is again from the fire Facebook groups that I'm in, phrased like thus. What is a good credit limit? Well, straight away we need to address as to whether you should have a credit limit at all. Now, if you're still at the Dave Ramsey stage of personal finance advice, which is that if you think everything that guy says is gold, then I would suggest no, you shouldn't have a credit card at all, because he's against it, right? You should cut up all your credit cards because you do not deserve the responsibility that comes with a piece of not even new technology in the form of credit at all. Full stop. No excuses. If you never intend to use credit cards, obviously the good credit limit for you is 0. Now, for the rest of us that doesn't need to be infantilized into oblivion, the answer is just as simple. A good credit limit, you know what the ideal one is? It's as high as the one that you can get. Easy peasy. Now, I'll tell you why, right? Number 1. Well, it's good for your credit score, right? Because credit utilization as a percentage of your total credit limit is part of how modern credit scores are calculated. So the higher your credit limit, the lower your credit utilization will be if your spending stays around the same level. Of course, credit scores are really not that useful after a certain point in life, right? I don't want to make it sound like that you need this, right? Maybe you need it for home loans, car loans. Maybe you need it to rent an apartment or sometimes even for employment. But let's assume you already have a job and a place to live and maybe even a property or two, right? You know, I'm ignoring car loans because those are just dumb as always, and you should never, ever, ever get a car loan. So now what? If you have all these things, honestly, that's the situation that I'm in right now, minus the employment bit, because I don't have an employer, right? I still want a high credit score simply for the sake of pride and ego alone, okay? So yeah, get into that mindset to get a high score simply because you can. In which case you need a high credit limit. That's across all your cards, right? Not just limited to 1 or 2. Point number 2. Keep in mind this very simple principle, okay? I think people keep forgetting, which is just because you have a high credit limit doesn't mean that you should spend it anywhere close to that amount, all right? I have to mention this because, my God, the usual responses that I see against having a high limit is always something like, oh, but if you have a high credit limit, you might spend more. What? Again, if you as an individual has ever not paid in full all your credit card bills in any single month, then I would suggest that you get some financial discipline first, right? Credit cards are just tools. They themselves do not make you an irresponsible spender, right? If you already spend responsibly, irresponsibly, that means you've always been irresponsible. The credit cards simply amplify your bad habits if you have those already, right? Conversely, if you have good habits, like me, then you would never even think of spending more than 5% of your credit limit, okay? Heck, for my regular spending monthly, I can keep it under single-digit percentages, even sometimes just like 1%. Below 1% of my overall credit limit, right? So develop the good habits first, I guess, before going crazy with collecting credit cards / credit limits, right? I have to make a side note for point 3, which is that I wouldn't go actually asking for credit card companies for these limited increases specifically unless you have a very specific reason for doing so, like you wanted to make a large purchase, right? Because I know if you're just starting out and you spend money on your card and use it responsibly, the institutions that gave you the card to begin with will want to give you increases themselves. My point is, no need to ask for an arbitrary ceiling to be raised, even though I think that set higher ceiling isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's not, it's just a neutral thing, right? It's not particularly good or bad. Anyway, this question is so simple, I don't think I can say any more about it. And for myself, I've only really been playing the credit card rewards game since after I hit early retirement, right? So at this point, my own combined credit limit is almost 200K. Now, do I give two shits about it? Do I feel some pride about it? Only a little bit, because remember, credit limit is not real money that anyone has, okay? So in my situation, if I really wanted to max out on my cars in the same month, sure, I could max out 200 G's worth of credit, but that would mean, because I pay it off all the time, on time, that would mean that all of a sudden I would have to pay off that amount, $200,000, in 1 month, okay? And there's 12 months in the year, so think about it. That'll be like a lot of money, right? That'd be like $2 million in a year. That would be a bad look on my part. And frankly, that's why it would never ever happen, right? So comment, like, and sub, and all that social media jazz. I mean, I would love to hear where your credit limit's at and whether you're happy with it. Again, having a higher limit doesn't mean anything, okay? It's just an arbitrary ceiling, right? So don't worry if your credit limit isn't very high, because, well, you know what? If it's proper for your usage, then it's good for you, okay? But like I said, for utilization purposes, you do want it higher if you can get there, right? But don't force it. Till next time, cheers.